In today's episode of HR Visionaries, we talk to Quilco from Outfittery. We talk about his vision of HR, in particular in the AI age. Stay tuned. Welcome to HR Visionaries, where we unlock the secrets of modern HR. I'm Benjamin, your host. Join us as we shed light on today's HR universe with HR leaders and innovators from across the globe. Whether you're an HR pro, a business leader, or just curious about the future of work, this is your shortcut to the forefront of HR innovation. Brought to you by Hire, the AI talent attraction platform. Welcome to the latest episode of HR Visionaries. I'm very much looking forward to my guest today, Quilco. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Benjamin. Thank you for having me.
Quilco, can you tell us a bit about yourself? Who are you?
Who am I? Well, I'm a 52 years old people guy who has never done anything else than people or human resources, as it was called back in the days, even though I hate that word, human resources. But I live with my wife, my 3 kids, which are now 19, 17, and 15, and our little dog, Curly. We are here in Berlin, living here about since 20 years, with one stint in between where I was expatriated to live for about 3 years in the US. And I am an excited, after now 27 years of being in the people space, still excited about people and working with people, around people. And maybe it's necessary to say my name is not a nickname or something. Quilco is actually my real name that is in my passport. That has to do with the background that my mom is from Bolivia, or was from Bolivia. And she met my father in the train here in Germany and never left Germany again. And therefore she wanted something that kind of like leans back to the origin of her side, and asked my dad if it would be okay that we all get Bolivian, Quechua, Indian names. And so this is my real name.
Okay, well, I was about to ask because it's indeed a very unusual name,
Yes.
and sorry for my wrong pronunciation. I wasn't aware of that, and I must say my Spanish lessons are several years in the past, and I'm not great at it.
Yeah, no problem. I'm very used to that. Everybody, I mean, it's from Quilco, Chilco, Kilco, Clico, anything, and I'm used to it, so that I'm absolutely fine.
Well, also one of the very few names that start with a Q, right? So that's
Yes.
pretty fascinating. You mentioned before you're a people guy. So what does that mean for you? So what is being a people guy for you?
I ended up in the human resource world because I was studying business administration, and I felt like it might be the wrong studies after all, because everything that I did from internships, etc., were great. Like the internships were great, but I thought like I'm never going to do that for the rest of my life, until I did one in a people department. And from day one, I felt like, okay, this is exciting, because I think, and I still today believe, that the most amazing, fascinating, crazy thing that exists on this planet are human beings. And for me to work with humans, about humans, it was just like, oh my gosh, this is the very best. Um, so that's what for me is a people guy, somebody who is excited about human beings, and wants to see them excel, wants to see them develop, wants to see them perform, etc. So that's my passion. That's my big passion.
It's actually quite interesting what you just mentioned. So, well, studying business administration in particular in Germany is like the catch-all kind of thingy, right? So for those, well, I did study business administration too. So so I think it's always quite interesting to see that, well, people either choose engineering, education, or business administration. So when you then started in your internship back then in the people department, so what was the first thing you recognized that was appealing to you?
For me, it was the topic, because I did internships in banking, I did internships in revision, I did internships in marketing, and for me it was kind of like the topic itself. I worked with teams and I loved working with the teams, but the product I was working on was either the marketing campaign, or it was the banking product, or it was selling something, etc. And that I always felt like, do I really want to be doing that forever? And then I entered into the people department, and all of a sudden it was like the people around was the subject, and it was about how do we get the best people, and after we got them, how do we make them most engaged, and then how do we get the bad ones out, and how does psychology work, and all of, and that actually triggered for me. Then when I came back after the internship, I said, like, well, I'm actually not sure if even the human resource side of business administration is enough. And I started studying business psychology as a second study parallel, because I did then an MBA in the US. And in the US, it was very clear that if you want to go into the human resource side, then psychology is a must. And then I started doing it there. And when I came back to my university, I actually did then a Nebenstudiengang, so like a side study for organizational psychology. And that was super, super exciting.
Well, the having a background in business administration, and then more, well, on the brain side of things, so to say, how hard did you feel changing subjects was for you?
Since I did it in parallel, I tried to finish my business administration study and had the psychology next to it. For me, it felt more like an exciting add-on, because, as you said, I found the business administration studies very dull, very not boring, but very fact-driven, theory-driven. So it didn't really excite me. And then, like, switching like the building and going into the psychology piece, I mean, there it was much more practical, and it felt more like I'm getting prepared for something I could envision how I could use it later on in the workplace. And a little side note, if you're studying business administration, back in the days when I studied it, there were pretty much only males in the studies. And the moment you switched over to psychology, it was exactly the opposite. There were about 80% females. I love that aspect too.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. So making that decision very early on, did some people try to stop you? Like, hey, are you sure you're gonna? Are you sure this is not a mistake? So since it is quite a great shift in your trajectory, isn't it?
Yes, I didn't feel, the only thing that I remember was that the people in business were challenging me why I'm going into the softy area, because the only
I
part
think
within
so.
business,
Yeah.
the only part within business that felt like, okay, the few women that were studying business, kind of like, hey, you probably also should also do human resources, because it's like it feels more, I don't know, about communication, it feels about more soft ability, more understanding, more empathy, etc. So that was pretty much the only thing, like, hey, do you really want to be ending up in the soft space of business instead of the hardcore business? And I said, yes, that's me, and it fits well, and I love it. And since people probably also felt that relationships and people and friendships, etc., was also like privately a big thing for me, and it still is. They probably felt it's a good match.
And then starting your first job in the HR space, how did you approach your first job, also with this background in business administration as well?
Well, the question, first of all, for me is always what was my first job? Because while I was studying on the psychology side, actually one of my professors asked me if I would like to join his company in parallel during my studies. He was a partner in a company that was doing assessment centers for companies, mainly development assessment center, but also selection assessment center. Today, it's something that's pretty much unheard of, but back in the days, there were assessment centers also for joiners into companies. And they asked me if I'm interested to actually work part-time there. And I did that, and I loved it. I mean, then I was going out to companies, and I was organizing the assessment center. I was helping the partners there to perform it, and then went back to my studies. So that was kind of my first job, but it was not a real job. And my first real job, I actually planned to be part of that consultancy afterwards. I had an offer to then start there, but I had this big dream that I wanted to do backpacking around the world. So I asked them if it would be okay for me if I don't start immediately after my graduation, but if I could kind of like go for a trip. And they said like, well, crazy Quilco, do whatever you want to do. We'll actually wait for you. And I went around with my backpack for 6 months around the globe. And during that time, the leading partner of that company died by a heart attack.
Oh dear.
And the other two partners, or the other three partners, started fighting badly about the company. And it felt like, do I really want my first job to join a company that is in the process of separating, big fights, etc.? So I felt, no, this can't be my first job. But I didn't have any second plans because I thought like I'm secure. So what I did, which was quite lame, was I felt like the only other companies that I know are my ex-clients that I work for. So I reached out to the banking because we were mainly in the insurance and the banking industry. We're doing the assessment centers. So I reached out to the HR departments and asked them, hey, you know me from the assessment centers. I decided now not to join them. Like, would you be interested in offering me? And I was mainly interested in a traineeship because I didn't know which area of HR I might be most interested in. And I actually got 2 offers to say like, hey, yeah, cool, we know you, like we would love you to have us. And so my real first job was then with Deutsche Bank, to become a trainee there.
Well, I have to ask, so what is when you worked at a company that prepared assessment centers, what was your favorite brain teaser?
My favorite brain teaser. Back in the days, I must say, brain teasers weren't part of the typical like usually it was 2 days. Sometimes it was even 3 days assessment centers. I actually, to be very honest, I actually liked from all the exercises, I liked the group discussion almost the most because it so showed how people are ticking. If they are all under pressure, if they all know that they are observed, and they try to find this ideal path between saying smart things, being active, trying not to be overactive, but then a lot of people totally misinterpret it and think like they need to be like the leader of the group.
Exactly,
and then like
right.
3-4 people try to be the leaders, and then it's very interesting. Usually none of them becomes the leader because one person in the room says something super smart, and you just see like the entire group leaning towards that person to become the indirect leader. And that people dynamic in this, whatever it is, an hour or something, I found fascinating because it told me so much about human beings. So that was probably my favorite part.
Well, if you had any recommendation for people listening, how to Well, how to perform well in a group discussion?
Well, number one is keep your integrity. Like, don't play anything. Like, it won't last. It starts well. Like, yes, like sometimes like somebody said something like really smart first sentence, and I was writing like, wow, that was impressive, blah, blah. But like, if it's not you, you cannot hold it up for an hour of intense discussions. Like, you fall back to the strength that you have or that you don't have. Um, and we always said to the candidates in advance, like, the worst thing, like, you can try to play something, but then you need to get it from the beginning till the end. Because if halfway through we have the feeling that you were doing a show, then we do not believe that anything of the good stuff that we saw before was worth it either. So it was all scratched out. So like, okay, it was obviously just a show, and then we don't believe nothing. And therefore, like this, I would still say, like, keep your integrity and play your strengths. So be very self-reflective what you can bring to the table. And if you are a more timid person who is very reflective but very good observer, then it's okay to be silent for a while in a group discussion, but then kind of like maybe raise your hand and say like, hey, may I reflect on what I'm seeing, what the group dynamic currently is, and I'm not sure if we are on the right path. And then is the best that you can bring. If you are a natural leader in speaking, or if you are a natural leader in organizing or bringing things into perspective or into structure, play whatever is your strengths, but don't play something else.
I must say I find that super interesting because that's also the when asking the question, I had also this answer in mind. So if I had any recommendations, I think it would always be okay, be genuine. So be yourself. I remember as a very young applicant. A situation where well, you're not, if you're not used to those group discussions, this is actually quite weird, right? So and
Totally.
you might be quite surprised. But then well, just thinking through, okay, so how do I ideally behave, or am I just who I am? And then it's so interesting to see how people will fall into some kind of roles, and you're like, okay, so that is just totally made up. And do you really think that people who do these kind of assessment centers, like on a weekly or perhaps on a monthly basis, are not able to see through and not able to understand, okay, this is completely made up and it's like a souffle that will fall together immediately? Okay, it's quite strange, but it's still something that happens, right? That happens on
At
all
least
the
back in
time.
the days. I mean, the times of assessment center are long gone. Like, nobody like affords an assessment center anymore. So kind of like, I think therefore it's not for the younger listeners. It's nothing that they need to worry about, because I don't see it coming back very soon that people are needing to go through assessment centers again.
Um, can you tell us a bit about the next stages of your career? So you started in a traineeship, and then how did you turn from a trainee to a leader?
Well, sometimes people ask me kind of like, hey, Kilko, kind of like, what's your secret sauce of success? And I have to be very honest. The biggest factor of my success in business is luck. And it's not like luck 50% and the other 50% is intelligence, hard work, or etc. It's more than 80% it's luck, because you have to be at the right time, at the right place, and especially meet the right leaders that you can have a career that I had. And for me, it started early on. Like, I was a trainee, and while I was a trainee, I actually became for a couple of months the assistant of the board member for human resources of the bank. And we became friends very fast. And he took me under his wings and said, like, Quilco, like, I see something in you, and I want to see it that it develops. And he was, for example, one of, like, he says, like, well, Quilco, you could, for example, I would have thought, like, oh, maybe like I'm staying with him for a longer period and become his personal assistant for a while. And then usually you heard, like, back in the days, that becoming the assistant of a board member usually kind of like, then you had like you jump 2 or 3 steps. And he said, like, hell no, you can't become an assistant of mine, because the way you tick, Kilko, doesn't work with what happens after you became my assistant, because then you need to stay in the headquarter and you become some project lead or something, and you need to work very, very intellectually on subject matter. But you became a person, a people person, because you wanted to work with people. So I'm going to send you away from me after a couple of months. It's like, you need to go. You need to be where the people are. And he, for example, said, like, and he said, like, and you should probably go somewhere where is a lot of good dynamics. And he said, back in the days, the biggest dynamic in the bank was actually in the IT department, because he said, like, hey, we are right now developing online banking. There's so much new going on with mobile phones and all of that stuff, which was new to the planet. And he said, like, go there, because if you go to classical banking, it has been always done, and probably there's not going to be so much change. But in IT, there's a lot of change. So the next role that I had was becoming an HR advisor, how it was called back in the days, in the IT department, and in application development and IT security. And I did that for a while before he, still the board member, said, like, Kilko, like, I think the next step is you should go abroad. And so I went abroad to Singapore for a little more than a year. And in the beginning, I hated it, because when he said, like, I'm going to go abroad, I felt like, oh, cool. I want to go to the US again, because I studied there, and I thought, like, it's so cool. And he said, like, no, can't go to Singapore, can't go to US. I said, like, why? Because he said, Kilko, no matter where you come back from, it will always be an amazing year where you have learned a lot. But in the US, you expect it to be great, and it's going to be great. So your learning curve is a little bit. What is the place that you fear the most? And I said, like, oh, that's clear. That's Asia. And he said, okay, you're going to Asia. I said, like, no, that was a joke. Like, don't send me there. He's like, no, I'm serious. You're going to Asia. And he said, like, because it is going to be great again, but the learning curve of what you fear, it's going to be the disaster, and it's going to be great. Your learning curve is going to be much higher. So I had leaders like that multiple times. Also, when I left then the bank after 6 years or something, and it continued that I had the luck of having leaders that saw something in me and wanted to develop me, and therefore it became that I became what I'm now, Chief People and Culture Officer at Outfittery. So it's mainly luck.
I am well. I, I agree with you that it, of course, is a super important part of one's development, so to be at the well at the right place at the right time. However, are there any opportunities, or are there any ways to well to make sure that you're there when opportunities happen? So how to basically foster your luck a bit?
Yeah, you can try to help your luck a bit. That's true. And the first one is probably a more from a negative perspective, is run if you have a bad leader. And I mean run. Like, there, I see so many people privately and on the business side over my many years in the people world that's live on hope, kind of like, maybe it's going to get better, or okay, he had a good week or a good month, but in principle, or maybe there will, I heard a rumor that there might be a change one day, or in a couple of years that person will retire, and then kind of like, maybe it's going to get better. All of this is like, sorry, like, your life, your development, your time is so much more precious. So if you are in a bad spot, either, and that is most of the times with a bad leader, or in a company with a bad culture, I would just say run and take the risk. Yes, you're going to go into a new probation period and you're going to don't know if the new place is better, but you at least give, again, you give luck a chance to put you at a better place.
I must say, I find that incredibly interesting, given I also remember my traineeship at Deutsche Bank. So we have that in common indeed, where
you were there as well.
Yes, but a few years after you left, unfortunately. Yeah. So we didn't meet there. And one of the most remarkable situations I ever encountered was a speech of one of the very senior leaders who told the entire class, well, if there's one thing that you need to keep in mind, it's choose a strong leader you want to work for. And I back then thought, well, I'm actually quite lucky that my boss is a very strong person and a great mentor. However, I totally underestimated how important it is. And then, well, looking back, at a well, is also a career, well, of well, 1.5 decades, that were actually quite decisive things. So it was a very important decision to work for a very strong boss you can grow with, and that who provides you with input how to improve, and is interested in you as a person and interested in your growth, compared to people like weak bosses who would never accept anyone strong growing because they will always fear for their own position. And that is it's something very, very interesting indeed.
Yeah, I mean, it's still true that, like the old saying, people join great companies and leave bad leaders. I think we are so many times deceived by a great name of a cool company, or the cool product that this company is doing, etc. And we kind of feel that this is at the end giving us the excitement, the satisfaction, etc. And I would say, in most cases, it is the leader. You probably can be in a quite boring company, but if you have a leader that triggers you trying new things, that wants to see you develop, that constantly tries to challenge you, but also is interested in your well-being as a human person, etc., it's probably a wonderful place. And other places, I don't know, which sound cool, which could be Tesla or Google or Apple, or I don't know what are the most famous and most exciting sounding companies right now, can be really, really awful places if you end up in a team with a bad leader.
How has the importance of leaders changed over the last 25 years?
Oh, I actually believe it was always important. I think there was never a day when leadership was not probably the number one success factor and performance driver. But I think it has changed significantly because of two things. Number one, the dynamic around people has changed. So everything that we are experiencing with digitalization, with agility, with whatever it is, you talk from Scrum to Kanban, from whatever you name it, has put more emphasis on the human side of business. So really understanding that how humans are working optimally together. And at the same time, companies are always trying to be more efficient. So they're trying to do more with less. So again, there you need to have a system of humans, of a team, that can be high performing. And so I think that the pressure on the people is higher, and therefore automatically the pressure of a good leader is higher. So that is one aspect. And the second big aspect, and maybe even bigger, is back in the days it was an employer market. So if you had a great application, you had a position opening, you were posting it, and we received 200 whatever, like baskets full of applications, and you were the one picking and they were the one begging. Now, this has completely changed. Now it is an employee market, and the companies are begging and you can be picking. And therefore, like, this entire aspect of how great is the team, how well do the people feel, etc. Do you create retention that people like to stay a little longer than a year and a half with your team, etc. All of this, I would say, put additional burden on the performance and of leaders.
I think what you said in particular, well, also what you said with regards to, well, if there is more automation in processes, people can focus on value creation to a much greater extent. So all the admin stuff that has been digitalized over the last years, last decades, that all made every contributor so much more valuable to the company. So therefore, also made leading people also a bit more difficult, given leading a group of people who do standardized admin work. If someone leaves, well, it's easy to replace them nowadays. It's so much harder to replace people because we have now people who are specialists rather than generalists, and I think that made leadership so much more challenging compared to the decades prior.
You're absolutely right. And I think we are right now, as we are speaking, in a process where we add another complexity. I mean, AI is just like the next thing. And I would say, again, because of AI, the challenge to become and stay a good leader will probably even further increase, because AI is going to change our world and our work environment and how people work. And like, to learn what that means, again, from a leadership perspective, I think going to add another layer that has not been there before. So I think we are experiencing this right now again.
Can you tell us a bit more about your view of how HR will look like in 5 years' time? So probably AI will not solve all our problems, but a number of problems. So how do you picture HR in 5 years?
Well, it depends on which aspect. I mean, if you would look for the few ones that still remember the good old Dave Ulrich model, like, it's a question which part of human resource we look at. Like, there's one aspect, of course, like the service center. Like, how will AI and digital and robots and everything, like, change the service center atmosphere? Like, how will we see that contracts will be issued? How will we see that payroll will be done? How we will see, like, super smart HR IT systems, etc. So I think there we will see the fastest, the most dramatic change of, because a lot of things actually can be, I think, replaced and can be made better and can be made faster, and probably also with less error. So that's one aspect. Then you have that, what was called the center of expertise. So, like, the few people that focus on compensation benefits and on people development and on D&I and on labor relations, etc. And I think there it's going to be very scattered. I think some aspects AI will dramatically take over, because you can just, like, why would you need an expert for something where you can ask the same question that you needed internally to ask an expert, like, let's say, something on compensation models, etc., or on market pay or on whatever, if you can now ask AI, you probably soon will get the same smart answer, or you get even a better answer from AI than you ever got from your internal source. So there, I would say it depends on which aspect of the center of expertise you're going to work in, how much AI is going to change. And the third one, like the business partnership, where you are, how I call it, and I expect it from my business partners, like where you sit on the lap of the leaders and try to make them better leaders. There, I would say I see the latest, or in the queue, the latest, the real impact of AI, because I think this trust relationship where you have someone who challenges you how you can become a better leader, and somebody who mirrors you and says to you kind of like, hey, the way you behave there, or what I heard from your team, or what, like, I think that is, I think it will take a while until AI will be able to coach you that way. Do I believe that AI will be a good coach? Yes, absolutely. Because good coaching is about finding the right question at the right time so that you can make up your mind. And I think AI will be able to do that. But in the setting of you have to observe something, and then you challenge the leader and then help the leader become a better, I think there, in that aspect, I'd say it comes later. So that would be my situation. So depending on where you work in HR, you will probably see AI having different impacts.
When we think about AI, I think very many people have in mind that AI takes over roles that, well, are not very attractive, that that don't leave enough room that you can, well, be creative. What do you think will happen in terms of the new HR organization? Will be will have more time for creative work, will have more time for value contributing work. What will people do with all the free time?
You mean the internal people, like the HR people? What will they do,
Yes.
or what will the workforce in principle will do with?
Well, perhaps you can answer both. So I think
I fear I cannot answer any of them, because if I have the right answer to that, I would be a prophet. But I would say the number one thing is we should be quite challenging ourselves with the thought that AI takes over all the non-creative work and we are left with the value contribution and the creative stuff. Because if you look into the AI scene of the last year, I would say, it appears to me at least that, interestingly enough, a lot of the value creation, innovation, creative pieces are being taken over. Like, it is not only like the stupid text, or that somebody is going to help you coding, etc., but then you can do like the fancy layout. But like the latest that I have seen is more and more AI tools like telling you like, no, Kilko, like you're not the best to do the slide deck, like the creative piece and what looks fancy. I'm much better at that, and I will be taking over that piece. And so I'm not so sure. And if you see, like, I don't know, in the art industry, if like you see like, okay, we're going to leave AI do the basic work, and then we are, I don't know, creating music. Like, but now like AI and more is creating music itself. So I'm not so sure if this like myth is still true, that which part AI takes over and which part they leave behind. Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe we need to do the structural work and think about how we're doing stupid prompts into AI so that AI can be creative and fun and exciting and etc. I don't know. But in the HR scene, I would say we are actually, I hope I'm right, at a very good spot. because I believe the more complexity we arise, the more important humans become. And to be in a function that hopefully has the expertise to say, we know how humans work. Kind of like we know something about engagement. We know something about good leadership. We know something about mental health, etc. Then I think you become much more valuable in the future. But on the other hand, I have met a lot of HR people who I, at the end, don't find that insightful when it really becomes about humans. They are more on the technical side. They know how, I don't know, how to write this paper or how to do something with the works council or the unions, etc. And I feel like, whoa, like are we actually the experts in humans? Because I think we need to be, to have a place at the table going forward.
Yeah. Well, I love that positive outlook, and I love that positivity indeed. Given, well, I 100% agree with you. So I think humans will be much more important going forward, and therefore HR is a great place to be, given one can shape an organization, you can shape how people work at your organizations, and therefore, well, it's in a fantastic spot to be.
Yes, and I must say, I would love everyone in the human resource world to start tackling more the topic, or the beast, how I call it, of culture. Because I think we have understood a lot of stuff. Like, I think we have managed rather well to understand how people develop. I think some people are quite good in how good leadership looks like. And I don't know, you need to, if you don't, like, just you listen to like our probably everybody's guru in HR, Simon Sinek, a little bit, and then you like have learned a lot. But to understand how company cultures work and how you can actually influence them, I think is a magic tool. And I think culture becomes more and more a topic, and candidates that stay, leave, or join companies are more and more looking into what the company culture is like. And I think that is a beast that not so many HR people have yet really conquered, to say like, yes, I know how to do that. I know how to help shape a culture beyond, oh, we need to do good communication, because that's the first thing that everybody says, like, it's all about communication. Like, yeah, that's a good first step, but it's much, much more.
Wilke, I have one last question. So, what are your top 3 questions in an interview to find out what you need to know about a person?
Well, that is a great question. And I'm actually
therefore, save the truth for the last.
Yes, perfect. I can just tell you, like, 2 come immediately to mind, because it has not been a single interview in the last 10 years that I have not asked at least these 2. And let me think while I'm talking about these 2, like about maybe the third.
2 is also fine.
The 2 questions that I always ask is, number 1, what are you great at? And I explicitly say, I don't want you to answer with like this typical strengths weaknesses answer. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the one magic power that you have. And why do I ask that? Because number 1 is, I think we have the biggest impact with our magic powers, with our one thing that we are great at. And there's not that much. Maybe there's people who are 2, and some superheroes might have 3. I don't know. But I think it's mainly 1 or 2 superpowers that we have. And I would like to hear about it. I would like to make the fit of what they say to what I know about the team, about the need, about the role, etc. If that is a good match. And at the same time, it tells me very much about how much reflection these people have done. Because you hear a lot of very different answers. People who are like totally taking over, like, what is he talking about? And then they start listing their strengths. And it's like, no, I told you in the beginning, like, that wasn't my question. Like, what is your superhero thing? And they're really lost. Some others immediately say, like, well, I can tell you like what the Strengths Finder said. And they say, like, oh, that's a good start. What is your number one in the Strengths Finder? And immediately I know, like, these people have started this process. So that is one question that I always ask. And the question that I always have asked, same many years probably, that people are really shocked about, is that I ask them about their, how you call that, what would be what has been that if you would be interviewing, I would ask you, Benjamin, what have been the moments, the experiences in your life, the decisions that you took, or whatever it happens, they might be good or they might be bad, that has shaped you the most to become the person that you are today? So formative experience. In America, they would call them formative experience. But usually if you ask, like, hey, what's your formative experience? Most people, at least in your look at you, like, they have no clue what you're talking about. But that's what you're. So what is this formative experience? And people become also like, they were like, what? Like, are you talking business? Like, what has been my biggest project? Or like, ever? Like, from like born, like when I was born, like anything, whatever you define as your most formative experiences. And I tell you, it is amazing what you are learning about the people. Like, so yes, some people immediately start talking about their parents. Some people talk about sicknesses. Some people talk about projects, some things about at work, out of work. But you get so close to a person that you have barely met, and it gives me so much insight. I love that question. So these are the two that I always ask. I have a list of what I ask depending on who I have in front of me, but these two always exist.
That's phenomenal. That's absolutely phenomenal indeed. I have a question to one of your questions immediately. For the other one, I'm still struggling to find a great answer. And I don't say what question I find easy to answer and what I don't. Quilco, it was amazing talking to you. Thank you so much for your insights. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you for having me. It was great talking to you, and I hope that there are some listeners who can take one or the other nugget with them and find it inspiring.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure many people will like the conversation a lot. Thank you so much again. It was great having you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And to all of you listening, bye-bye.